The first letter arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. One of those days that promises nothing more than routine. I almost didn't open it. The envelope was simple, cream-colored, with no return address. My name was handwritten on the front, the handwriting familiar enough to feel comforting, yet strange enough to make me pause. I recognized it before I allowed myself to think. It was his. I smiled, assuming it was a spontaneous gesture. A note written without reason. A quiet way of saying, "I'm thinking of you." I opened it. "If you are reading this, it means I thought about you more than I should today." Something warm spread through my chest. That was exactly how he always began, when he wanted to say something important, but didn't know how. The letter spoke of small things. The way I frowned when I was worried, my habit of lining up the glasses before going to bed. The fear I carried silently, the fear of losing the people I love. Nothing felt out of place, except for one sentence written near the end. "There are things we cannot explain while we are still here." I folded the letter slowly, an unease settling inside me without a clear shape. That evening, when he came home, I showed it to him with a light smile, expecting recognition, maybe even pride. He read it in silence, once, then again. His expression changed. "I didn't write this," he said, with a short, uncertain laugh. I thought he was joking. "Of course you did. That's your handwriting." He shook his head, serious now. "It looks like mine, but I don't remember writing it. I swear." We laughed it off, choosing comfort over doubt. We agreed he must have written it distractedly late at night, and simply forgotten. But that night, while he slept beside me, I stayed awake. I read the letter again, and again. Something about it didn't feel like a memory. It felt like a goodbye. 2 days later, the second letter arrived. This time, my name was written with heavier strokes, as if the hand that wrote it was in a hurry. Before opening it, I already knew. This wasn't coincidence, and it wouldn't be the last. The second letter arrived on a Thursday. It didn't make a sound, didn't demand attention, but the moment I saw it resting on the table, I knew exactly what it was. The same envelope, the same handwriting. Only this time, the letters were pressed harder into the paper, as if written with urgency. I waited for him to come home before opening it. There was something inside me that needed to watch his face again, as if the truth might reveal itself there. Not in the words, but in the way he reacted to them. He sat down across from me, tired. Work had been draining him lately, but this exhaustion felt different, not physical. Distracted, as if part of him was always somewhere else. I slid the envelope toward him. "It came today," he exhaled before opening it. A small, uneasy breath, as though some part of him already knew. He read in silence. This time he didn't smile. The letter was more direct, less gentle. It spoke about choices, about how some decisions are made, before we are even aware we've chosen. It spoke about fear, not the ordinary kind, but the kind that appears when time begins to close in. And then, the sentence that made my chest tighten, "If you ask me about this tomorrow, I may not know how to answer." He lifted his eyes slowly. This doesn't make sense," he murmured. "I wouldn't write like this." "But you did," I said, trying to stay calm. "It's all here. It's you." He rubbed his face, restless. "It sounds like someone who knows he's going to forget," he said. "Or worse, someone who knows he won't be here." The silence that followed was too heavy to ignore. That night he woke suddenly, breathing fast. He said he had dreamed he was trying to tell me something, but the words disappeared before he could say them. "It's like I'm talking to myself in the future," he whispered, confused, but without remembering what I said. The next day, the third letter arrived. Before noon. No delay. No mistake. This time I opened it alone. My hands were shaking. The letter described something that hadn't happened yet. A conversation, a specific sentence he would say that evening. A pause before finishing the thought. And exactly as written. The conversation happened, word for word. When he finished speaking, I was pale. I showed him the letter. He turned pale too. "That's impossible," he whispered. "I never thought that before." That was when I understood. The letters were not being written for me. They were being written for time, and time was answering. That night, near the bottom of the page, I noticed a final line, written close to the margin, as if added in haste. "If this is the last one, I hope you understand." My heart sank, because for the first time, I was afraid to open the next letter. The fourth letter arrived on a Sunday morning. That alone felt wrong. He never wrote on Sundays. He said Sundays were for silence, for letting the mind rest. The envelope was waiting on the doormat when I opened the door. No stamp, no marks, just my name written carefully, almost gently. I didn't open it right away. I stood there for a long time, holding it as if it might burn my hands. When I finally did, I noticed something immediately. The handwriting was calmer, slower, as if whoever wrote it had accepted something. I still didn't understand. "This will be hard to read," the letter began. "But you deserve to know." My breath caught. It spoke of moments we hadn't lived yet, of a morning that hadn't happened, of a conversation we hadn't had. And then it mentioned a date, a specific date, 3 days away. "You'll wake up thinking it's just another day," the letter said. "But it won't be." My heart started racing. I read on. It described what he would wear that morning, what I would say to him in the kitchen, the way he would hesitate before leaving. Details too precise to dismiss, too intimate to ignore. I stopped reading halfway through. When he came into the room, I was still standing there, the letter folded tightly in my hand. "What's wrong?" he asked. I handed it to him. He read slowly, too slowly. When he finished, he didn't speak right away. "That day," he said carefully, "I've been thinking about it. I don't know why." I felt cold. "You've been thinking about a day that hasn't happened yet?" He nodded. "It feels important," he said, "like something I shouldn't forget." That night he barely slept. He kept waking, checking the time, as if afraid of missing something invisible. The next day passed exactly as the letter had described. Every word, every pause. By the second night I was terrified. I picked up the letter again and forced myself to read the rest. The final paragraph was shorter. He wrote, "I don't know if I'll be able to say this out loud, so I'm writing it now, in case tomorrow takes something from me." My hands were shaking. "If this letter reaches you, please remember this." I was not afraid at the end. I was only sorry I didn't have more time to love you. I looked up from the page, my chest tight. He was standing in the doorway watching me. "I feel like I'm saying goodbye," he said quietly. "But I don't know to what." For the first time, I didn't try to reassure him, because deep down, I already knew. The next letter wouldn't be written in advance. It would be written instead of him. The date arrived quietly. No thunder, no warning signs, no sense of finality in the air. Morning unfolded exactly as the letter had said it would. He wore the grey jacket he almost never chose. I commented on it without thinking. He paused in the doorway, just as described, as if something invisible was pulling him backward. "You okay?" I asked. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I feel like I'm forgetting something important," he said. "Something I promised myself I wouldn't forget." I watched him leave, my chest tight with a fear I couldn't name. The hours crawled. Every sound made me flinch. Every minute felt borrowed. By late afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I reached for the stack of letters, reading them again, searching for something I had missed, Something that might tell me how to stop what was coming. That's when I noticed it. The ink. The first letters were written in bold, confident strokes. The later ones less so, as if the hand writing them was growing tired. Or weaker. At the bottom of the last letter, there was something I hadn't noticed before. A faint impression, almost invisible. I held it up to the light. There were words beneath the words, indented into the paper, not written. Pressed. I traced them with my finger. Time is shorter than it looks. My phone rang. I didn't answer it right away. Some part of me knew that once I did, the world would change. When I finally picked up, the voice on the other end was calm. Too calm. There had been an accident. A sudden one. Nothing anyone could have done. I thanked them without knowing why. I hung up without remembering how. The house felt unbearably quiet. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. I don't know. That night I sat alone at the table. The letters spread out before me like pieces of a broken timeline. And then something impossible happened. A knock at the door. Soft, careful. I froze. When I opened it, there was no one there. Just an envelope on the floor. This one was different, thicker, heavier, and for the first time, the handwriting wasn't careful. It was rushed, uneven, almost desperate. I closed the door with shaking hands and opened the letter. If you are reading this, then this is the one I couldn't finish in time. My breath caught. I tried to write after it happened. But I couldn't stay long. I don't know how this is reaching you. Tears blurred my vision. I need you to understand something. The letters didn't come to warn you. They came so I wouldn't disappear unfinished. I pressed the page to my chest. I knew I was running out of time, so I wrote myself forward into moments I hoped I'd still reach. The final line was written so faintly, it almost vanished into the paper. This isn't goodbye. It's just the last time I write. I realized then the letters had never been about death. They were about staying. I didn't open the last letter right away. I couldn't. It sat on the table for hours, heavier than all the others combined, because this time I knew something had changed. This letter hadn't arrived before anything. It had arrived after. When I finally unfolded it, the paper felt warmer than the rest, as if it had been held longer, as if he had struggled to keep writing. I don't know how much time I have left here, the letter began, but I know this will reach you. My chest tightened. I need you to understand something I couldn't say while I was alive. Alive. The word hit harder than the news ever had. I didn't write the letters because I was afraid to die, he continued. I wrote them because I was afraid to leave you unfinished. Tears fell onto the page. I felt it weeks before it happened. That sense of narrowing, of time folding in on itself. And somehow, I was allowed to write forward. The letter explained what I hadn't been able to accept. He hadn't predicted the future. He had been remembering it. I wasn't sending messages to you, he wrote. I was anchoring myself, so that when the moment came, I wouldn't vanish completely. My hands shook. Every letter was a way of staying, a way of choosing you again and again, even when I couldn't be there. I thought of the first envelope, the careful handwriting, the tenderness. He had been saying goodbye long before I knew how to hear it. The last paragraph was shorter, slower. I know you'll blame yourself for not stopping it. Please don't. Nothing you could have done would have changed the ending. My breath broke. But something did change. I read the next line twice. You are not alone now. You are carrying more life than you realize. My heart stopped. I knew before you did. The letters helped me understand why staying mattered. I pressed my hand to my stomach, the truth crashing into me all at once. This is how I stayed, he wrote. This is how I saved us both. The final sentence was barely legible. Love doesn't end when time does. It just finds another way to arrive. I folded the letter and held it against my chest. He hadn't sent the letters to warn me. He had sent them to carry himself forward, not as a memory, but as a presence. Months later, when I felt the first quiet movement beneath my ribs, I finally understood. He hadn't left me. He had stayed. In every word, in every moment he had written himself into, and in the life that would soon breathe because of him. The letters stopped coming after that. They weren't needed anymore, because the man who knew he was running out of time had found a way to remain. And love, when it is strong enough, does not disappear. It writes itself forward.